In my previous life, I was overjoyed when my mother secretly slipped candy into my mouth, avoiding my younger siblings, until I woke up and realized I had been kidnapped. After enduring countless hardships to return home, I was met with nothing but scorn and insults from my parents. Left with no other choice, I had to work tirelessly to help support the family. As a result, at the age of 17, they deceived me once again with a piece of candy. When I woke up, I was missing a kidney. I confronted them, but they said that this was my purpose. I was utterly thunderstruck. I still don't understand why they treated me that way. I fell off a cliff and died with my body torn to pieces. When I opened my eyes again, the familiar human trafficker was standing at my doorstep once more. "Little one, would you like some candy?" An auntie dangled a piece of milk candy in front of me. The familiar scene made me realize I had truly been reborn. We were taught from a young age not to accept food from strangers, as human traffickers could sell us to places where no one would know us. In my previous life, I avoided the candy offered by the traffickers, but I never expected it to be handed to me through my mother's hand and forced into my mouth. That was the first time my mom gave me candy to eat, and I was overjoyed. I never thought that something unusual must have a reason. After eating the candy, I fell into a drowsy sleep, and in my daze, I seemed to hear their conversation. "A girl isn't worth much, and she's already this old. At most, 1,000, 1,000 it is, just get it done quickly." When I woke up, I was in a completely unfamiliar place. Since I was little, my grandmother always said I was the smartest, and I immediately realized I had been trafficked. I pretended to be foolish for 3 days, following them for 3 days. Taking advantage of someone having a stomachache, I ran away. I managed to walk back home on my own. Contrary to what I had imagined, instead of my parents' concern, I was met with a barrage of scolding. They say all I do is play around, always running off for days at a time. They scold me for not acting like an older sister, saying it would have been better if the traffickers had taken me away. I was terrified. I worked desperately hard, eat the least amount of food, do the most work. I thought as long as I worked hard enough, they would surely notice me. However, I waited and waited, waited and waited, day after day, year after year. My younger siblings all went to school, and I wanted to go too, but my father said, if I went, there would be no one left to do the work. "And you say I eat so much all day, yet I don't want to work and just want to enjoy a comfortable life at school." At that time, I didn't know what PUA was, but under the verbal attacks from both of them, I fell into deep self-blame. No matter what was placed in front of me, I would question whether I deserved it or not. In the mountain village, there were girls everywhere who didn't pursue education and got married as soon as they reached a certain age. I think this is quite good too. When I get married, I can also have a home of my own, but I never expected that my younger brother would suddenly fall ill, making our already struggling family's situation even worse, just as I was getting anxious and upset along with everyone else. My mother gave me another piece of candy. I was caught off guard. After eating it and waking up, I felt excruciating pain all over my body. I lay in a snow-white hospital room. The gentle nurse told me that I had lost a kidney and would need to work less and take good care of my health from now on. I didn't understand. I had only eaten a piece of candy, so how could I have lost a kidney? What is the kidney used for? Until I could no longer do heavy work, until I frequently fell ill. But from my parents, what I received was still constant scolding and beating. They resented me for not being able to work and still needing to eat, so they started thinking about marrying me off. But in the mountain village, who would be willing to marry a woman in poor health? Until that day, when a heavy rain poured from the sky, my mother asked me to go pick vegetables from the garden. I was running a high fever and stumbled out of the house in a daze. Echoing in my mind were the whispers between her and my father. If it really comes to it, we can sell her as a woman again. After all, we bought her in the first place. What's one more time? So it turns out, I was never their child to begin with. That's why there was never any affection or proper upbringing to speak of. My foot slipped, and my body tumbled down the mountainside. I thought I would die, but when I opened my eyes, I saw that human trafficker again. Seeing that I didn't respond, the other person waved the candy in front of me again. "Do you want some? Let me tell you, it's really sweet." I took a deep breath, accepted the candy, and quickly put it in my mouth. "Thank you, Auntie." I grinned at her, probably never having seen a child so cooperative. She was taken aback. "You," before she could finish, my body went limp, and I slowly fell backward, losing consciousness. I don't know where she wants to traffic me, but since I managed to escape in my previous life, I should be able to run away again in this one. When I woke up again, the trafficker was carrying me through the mountains. She told me to call her Sherry. She also said my parents didn't treat me well and that she would find me new parents in the future. I followed Sherry for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Sherry took me to a middle-aged man's house. The man had a fierce face and looked very intimidating. He spent the whole night drinking and cursing. I quietly squeezed the juice from the grass I picked in the mountains into Sherry's meal. Just like in her previous life, she soon started vomiting and having diarrhea, practically living in the bathroom. The man, having drunk too much, soon began snoring like thunder. I quietly got up and stealthily picked up the man's lighter and half a bottle of liquor. Carefully, I slowly poured the liquor onto a pile of old cardboard boxes and newspapers stacked behind the door. Then I retreated to the farthest corner of the room and used a lighter to ignite the waste. The room instantly burst into roaring flames, thick smoke filling the air. I immediately raised my voice and shouted, "Fire! Help!" The piercing cries and the rapidly growing fire instantly woke the people nearby. The man rushed out, drunk, and like everyone else, his first instinct was to fight the fire. Seizing the opportunity, I hunched over, buried in the shadows of the moonlight, and dashed headlong into the dark alley without looking back, until the clamor behind me could no longer be heard. Finally, I stopped beside a garbage station in a semi-open, old residential area, quickly took off the messy clothes I was wearing and scrambled up from the garbage pile. After rummaging for a long time, I finally pulled out a faded, gray old t-shirt that someone had thrown away and put it on. Without any delay, I walked straight ahead, using the few characters I knew to read the street signs, and finally, as the sky began to lighten, I boarded the earliest long-distance bus. I curled up in a corner, hiding my small body behind an ant. Remote and barren areas are never short of people like me. Just to save a few dollars on bus fare, the auntie was unfazed, even using her skirt to cover me a little. Not long after, the bus started and carried me away from this place for good. This was how I made my way, heading north all along. For this, I even learned how to read a map. It wasn't until I stood on the ground of J City, my face covered in dust and my feet bare, that I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The sun was scorching, and the asphalt road burned the soles of my feet. I tightly clutched the few dozen dollars I had managed to beg for, enduring hunger. I went to the largest wholesale market in the city. With that little money, I bought the cheapest balloons and a few bottles of bubble solution. I chose to sell them at the entrance of the downtown park, where there were many children, and my child identity was the best camouflage. I would call out in a timid voice with a slight regional accent, perhaps out of sympathy or amusement. Adults would occasionally buy one. I earned 20 yuan that day. I divided the money I earned into 3 parts. One for food that day, one for the capital to purchase goods the next day, and the last little bit was saved up. While setting up my stall, I heard that 24-hour convenience stores and bank ATMs are also accessible at night. That became the place where I stayed at night. The rest of the time, my ears were never idle. I specifically listened to the idle chatter of the elderly, the conversations of working drivers, and the complaints of street vendors. From their casual conversations, I pieced together information about this city, which areas had a high transient population and chaotic management, and which police stations were too busy with major cases to handle minor issues. A week later, I had saved up over $100. I was quite satisfied and was thinking about how to make a big move when a few police officers found me. They asked me where I came from. They asked about my parents, who they were and what their names were. I didn't know how to respond, and I didn't want to be sent back. I had no choice but to remain silent. They took me to the police station and questioned me for a long time, then called a female officer to buy me food. I didn't eat, and I didn't speak. They told me that if I didn't speak up, they would have to send me to the welfare institution. Can I study there? I was sent to the J City Welfare Institution. Although I was only 7 years old, I quickly adapted to the environment here, helping Auntie take care of the younger siblings, assisting them with cleaning and washing the dishes. Soon, I was given a brand new name, Victoria. Additionally, Grandma, the head of the orphanage, arranged for my enrollment in a nearby elementary school. Finally, I too could sit in a classroom and study, just like my younger siblings once did. However, the difference was that my classroom was larger, more spacious, and brighter than theirs. The welfare home was too far from the wholesale market, so I could only take my younger siblings to collect scrap to help cover the expenses of the welfare home. A few months later, several couples gradually arrived at the welfare home. The headmistress recommended me to one of the couples, but I didn't want to go. However, the headmistress said that the orphanage could no longer afford the expenses, and she had to do her best to find good families for us. A month later, I was taken home by that couple. During our conversation, I learned that they had once had a son. A few years ago, they passed away unexpectedly. Their bodies also suffered severe trauma in the accident. They promised to treat me well. They prepared a brand new room for me, and dresses I had never seen before, yet they were beautiful. My school is still the same as before, but the difference is that my new mom picks me up and drops me off to school every day. On weekends, she takes me to the library, to the mall, and to all the places where there are lots of children. I am very scared. They are too good to me, something I never experienced in my entire previous life. I'm afraid this might be the same kind of candy that my mother fed me twice in a row back then, but every time I looked at them with such fear, my new mother would silently hold me tighter. She slept with me and told me stories. I learned many words and understood many truths. But what I love most is making money. Dad would give me money and let me buy things on my own. He said that those who know how to spend money are the ones who can make big money. He taught me how to read stocks and buy funds. A separate account was opened for me. In the blink of an eye, I was 10 years old. That day, passing by the lottery station, I was inexplicably drawn to buy a lottery ticket. After years of watching the stock market, I had developed the habit of not buying in single lots. The next day, as usual, I sat with my father in front of the computer watching the stock market. When the winning numbers from the previous day were announced on my mother's television, I'm stunned. I silently took out that lottery ticket. My parents were stunned too. We went to claim the prize fully armed, took photos together. My parents are taking me on a trip to celebrate my good fortune. But I vaguely remember watching news on TV in my previous life about several plots of land in J City. I threw a tantrum and insisted that my dad choose one to buy. I donated the majority of the remaining money to the orphanage I used to live in. There was still half left, so I bought a shopping mall. I have become the person I once never even dared to dream of being, but I still felt uneasy inside, and that unease became reality when I was 17, that day after school. As luck would have it, both my parents were busy and couldn't pick me up. I was blocked by them on the road. Doggy, we finally found you. All these years, your mother has missed you so much. Lucy was a far cry from the clean and proper image I remembered. Her clothes were tattered, her skin was dark, and her body was obese. She exuded a greasy feeling from the inside out. Suddenly, I remembered, in my previous life, I worked tirelessly and without complaint at home. From a young age, I took on almost all the tasks in the fields and at home. In this life, without me, they have no choice but to do everything themselves. On top of that, Jenny and Precious are not the kind of children who make life easy, so it's no wonder she has ended up with stress-induced weight gain. Bob was holding on to Precious tightly from behind, his eyes glaring at me fiercely as if I were a piece of juicy meat. I, hesitantly, shook my head. I don't know you, you stupid girl. Have you lost your mind? You don't know us. You were already so old when you were taken away. How could you not remember us? We are your biological parents. In just a couple of sentences, Lucy had already lost her temper. She pulled me over to Bob and Precious. This is your brother. Look at you, all dressed up in pearls and jewels, and then look at your brother. How can you bear to see him suffer so much? She actually asked me if I could bear it. I almost laughed. In my previous life, as long as I was at home, Jenny and Precious never had to lift a finger. Two people stepped on me. Enjoying all the resources in that household, they ordered me around every day, and if I disobeyed even slightly, they would immediately complain, bringing me a severe beating. Precious rushed over. Mom, I want her watch. Without a word, he grabbed my arm and started pulling. Precious's complexion was dull, with dark circles under his eyes, a weak gaze, and swollen nostrils. It's exactly the same as the symptoms of abnormal kidney function I recently looked into. It seems his illness has already started to manifest. I really don't know you. Let me go, I shouted at the top of my lungs. Passers-by turned to look. Bob immediately scolded them in a thick local accent. What are you looking at? This is our own daughter. I really don't know them, I said, almost in tears. Without a second word, Precious rushed over and punched me twice. You ungrateful wretch. Our family raised you for so many years. And now that you have a good family, you don't even acknowledge your own parents. I'll beat you to death, you heartless ingrate. A passerby couldn't stand to watch and called the police. My parents, upon learning what had happened, hurried to the scene. At that moment, Lucy was shouting at the police. This is our child. She was kidnapped by traffickers right outside our home when she was 6. You have no idea how much effort it took us to find her. now. All I want is to hear her call us mom and dad. Is that too much to ask?" My parents exchanged a look of shock and uncertainty, then silently held my hand. My dad told them to speak properly. "The child is still young. You're shouting so loudly, you're scaring them, you don't know anything." Lucy, overwhelmed with emotion, suddenly pushed my dad. "We all saw it. Doggy won the lottery jackpot. That money should rightfully be ours. Give it back to us." Both of my parents were stunned. It had been 7 years since the lottery incident, and I never expected them to bring it up so suddenly. I took a slow sip of the water the policewoman had poured for me. I understood then. This was their real intention. This family, even if they were to live another lifetime, would never change their greedy and cold-hearted nature. Upon learning that my parents had adopted me from the J-City orphanage, the police repeatedly questioned me about the time before my adoption. I shook my head each time. "I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know them." Bob and Lucy nearly broke down on the spot. "We raised you for so many years, searched for you for so many years, and you say you don't know us. You were so old when you were taken. How could you not recognize us? If you hadn't seen me and my parents going to the lottery station to claim the prize on TV, would you have looked for me?" I retorted. The two of them were left speechless. But then they became even more self-righteous. "You are our daughter. If you win the lottery, you should share it with us. Victoria, you saw what that couple looked like too. If you want to reunite with them, we support you." In the empty office the policewoman had arranged for us, my parents held my hands tightly and said to me, forcing back their sorrow, "Indeed, most of our family's money came from your lottery winnings. You can take it all. We ask for nothing, just that you come back to see us when you have time, okay?" Seeing the caution in their eyes, a heavy burden I had carried for many years finally lifted from my heart. I wasn't that sensible when we had no money, but they still loved me. "Dad, Mom, I don't remember them," I said. "I don't know them. It seems, I don't even look like them, do I?" My parents suddenly understood. The two of them said sincerely to the police, "You've seen the attitude of that couple, whether our child is their biological daughter or not. If she goes back with them, she will surely be devoured without a trace. I heard they have another daughter at home who isn't even able to go to school. If they can't provide a stable and healthy living environment for the child, we will never allow them to take her away under any circumstances." I kept saying I didn't remember and didn't recognize them. The police couldn't determine the relationship between me and Lynn's parents. In the end, they decided to conduct a DNA paternity test for both parties. Medical evidence does not lie. It just takes some time for the test results to come out, but when the forensic examiner stood before us with the tools, Bob and Lucy changed their mind. They pointed at the police and angrily shouted, "I think you've taken bribes from them and have no intention of returning this girl and the money to us. You're all in cahoots. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to file a complaint." The investigating officers couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "I don't even know you. Could it be that you just saw a news story about someone winning the lottery, and since I happen to be adopted by my parents, you're deliberately trying to scam us?" The police gradually became more serious. "If that's the case, it has to be handled as fraud." Without any explanation, they forcefully insisted on drawing our blood samples for a DNA paternity test. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn exchanged a glance, a trace of guilt flashing across their faces. I tugged at my parents' hands. "Can we record the whole process to avoid any mistakes?" The policewoman glanced at me and immediately arranged for a camera to record everything from sampling to identification. After the sampling was done, on the way home, Mom held my hand tightly the entire time. The next day, both of them even walked me to school together. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Dad, Mom, I really don't remember them. For me, the greatest fortune in this life is having you as my parents. Without you, there would be no me today." I meant every word. When I ran away from the Lynn family, I thought I might have to live by scavenging for scraps. I never expected that no one would despise my broken soul. They accepted and embraced my bad habits, teaching me bit by bit how to live, guiding me to explore this world. Both of them shed tears, held me and cried for a while before sending me off to school. But I didn't expect that shortly after entering the school, everyone started looking at me with strange expressions. During a break in activities, the class monitor suddenly ran over to me and said, "Victoria, even though your parents are wealthy now, you can't be ungrateful and abandon your biological parents. They've been searching for you ever since you were kidnapped, and their lives have been mostly ruined because of it. How could you not acknowledge them? How can there be someone as ungrateful as you in our class?" In the heat of the moment, she raised her voice and shouted. Upon hearing this, others also chimed in one after another. get out of our class, you ungrateful wretch, you brain-dead fool who only cares about money, being in the same class as you is my shame, get out, get out, they shouted collectively, even startling the vice principal. The homeroom teacher pulled me into the office with a troubled expression. What's going on with you, child? You're usually so appreciative. How can you be so indifferent when your biological parents have been searching for you for 10 years? She earnestly advised me, saying that although my current family situation is good, my biological parents have also put in a lot of effort to find me, and I shouldn't refuse to acknowledge them. At noon, while going to the school cafeteria for lunch, I saw Lucy continuously scattering flyers toward the campus. The students picked it up, read it, and their gazes toward me grew increasingly disdainful. A vacuum even formed around me. Some even posted about me online using their phones. They said I was a snob who disowned my biological parents. While eating, Mom called. She and Dad hugged each other, sobbing uncontrollably. It's okay, we're not biological father and daughter. Mother and daughter, Victoria, you have no connection to them. As soon as these words were spoken, the large cafeteria instantly fell silent. I nodded. Yes, I never knew them in the first place. Mom was so emotional that she kept shedding tears, and even Dad, who is usually authoritative, had reddened eyes. Good child, we're not afraid of you finding your biological parents. It's just that these parents are too. We've raised you so well, and we can't stand by and watch others take advantage of you. I couldn't help but laugh. When I first arrived at the Duncan family, both my parents were just employees at state-owned enterprises. Mom loved reading, and Dad enjoyed playing the stock market, but it was all just small-scale activities. Our life could only be considered a modestly comfortable one, but both of them were still willing to give their full patience to accompany and love me. I am the flower they nurtured with their hearts. What about them? They're arguing with the police, saying there's an issue with the appraisal results. But how could there be a problem with an appraisal that was recorded from start to finish? Dad sneered. I think they might have really come after seeing the news. Let the police deal with them. They said they would come together tonight to pick me up and take me to a big dinner. Hanging up the phone with a smile, I happened to catch the awkward glances from those around me. I shrugged, and the class monitor hesitantly shuffled over to apologize to me. I smiled and spread my hands, saying, next time, let's let the bullet fly for a while. The atmosphere at the school returned to normal. On the way back after the meal, a group of passionate young men had already teased Lucy outside the school quite a bit. Lucy probably hadn't received the notice yet, and for a moment, her face turned pale, but soon, she became self-righteous again. It's not that I gave birth to her, but I've raised her for so many years. She belongs to my family and must come back with me. Everyone was speechless. So, just as school was letting out in the afternoon, as soon as I stepped out of the school gate, she and Bob rushed out from somewhere. Without a word, the two of them dragged me aside. During the argument, Precious fell to the ground and suddenly couldn't move. After being rushed to the hospital, the doctor said that Precious's kidney failure had reached an advanced stage. Lucy burst into loud sobs, hitting me again and again with all her might. You wretched girl, if it weren't for looking for you, how could your brother have gotten this sick? Look at what you've done to him. He's about to die, and you still refuse to acknowledge us. How did I raise such an ungrateful wretch like you? My parents quickly called the police. The school was also well prepared, and the surveillance footage was delivered very promptly. The police investigation revealed that at the time of the incident, Bob was trying hard to pull me away, while the surrounding classmates and my parents were busy trying to save me. No one touched Precious at all. Precious suddenly felt her legs go weak and fell on her own. I don't care. Your brother only got this sick because he was looking for you. You have to take responsibility. That's right. What did the doctor say? A kidney transplant, right? You have to give your brother a kidney. You're his own sister. It's only right that you donate a kidney to him, otherwise, he'll die. My parents and the police were all stunned. They never imagined in their wildest dreams that this was the real intention of the Lynn family's parents. I almost laughed out loud. Donate a kidney? On what grounds? Bob immediately flew into a rage. On the grounds that we raised you for so many years. If it weren't for us, you'd be dead. Your life was given by us. What's the big deal about donating a kidney? It won't kill you. How can you be so selfish? Precious lay weakly on the hospital bed, reaching out to me. Sis, I'm your only brother, the root of our Lau Lin family. If I die, people will point fingers at you for the rest of your life. You're all insane. My mom was the first to lose her temper. Our Victoria has no blood relation to you at all. What kind of matching are you talking about? Donating what kidney? Do you think kidneys are like cabbages at a roadside stall? You think you can just pick whichever one you want? My mom tried to pull me away, but Lucy stopped her. No matter what, she wouldn't let me go. Even if Doggy isn't my biological daughter, so what? Haven't I raised her all these years? She is my daughter, and I can treat her however I want. I had been waiting for her to say exactly that. Immediately, I exerted force in my wrist and shook off her hand. You raised me all these years. I looked at her with a smile. Didn't you buy me all these years? I took a document folder out of my backpack. 15 years ago, you bought me from the human trafficker Sherry, because there was a belief in your area that if a couple couldn't have a child for a long time, adopting one would help attract a child, so you named me Doggy. From the age of 2 to 6, I did eat at your house for a few years, but not a single meal was enough to fill me up. I took out a photo, which was taken when Sherry took me away from the Lynn family. Tiny and thin as a skeleton, I was unbelievably dark all over, barefoot, my legs covered in various scratches. At the age of 6, you thought that since you already had a son and a daughter, I had fulfilled my purpose and might as well be sold for money, so, you called Sherry, drugged me with a piece of candy, and took me away. For many years after that, you probably never thought of me, until the year you finally bought a television. On the very first day you turned it on, you saw me and my parents going to the lottery station to claim a prize. From then on, you felt you had suffered a great loss and began searching for me far and wide, but it seems retribution is inevitable. Your only son has kidney failure, none of your family members are a match. You have no money and no resources, so you thought of me again. I handed all the materials to the police officer handling the case. What should I call you, Mom and Dad, or perhaps, human traffickers? My parents were completely stunned. Over the years, they had also tried to imagine my past, but they never expected that I came from a poor mountainous area in the south. At the age of 6, I crossed half the map alone, just to escape my fate. My mother held me tightly, her heart aching. The crowd around was filled with righteous anger, demanding that the traffickers be severely punished. Lucy shook her head, repeatedly saying it wasn't like that. What's the point of wasting words with them? Whether she gives it or not, once she's dead, she won't need it anyway, Bob roared. He suddenly snatched the cart from a nurse passing by with medical equipment and rammed it straight into me. His gaze was fierce. At the critical moment, the police stepped forward. A flying kick subdued the frenzied Bob. Even after being handcuffed, Bob still stared at me obsessively. My mother stood in front of me, holding me tightly, her whole body trembling. I didn't snap back to reality until someone gave me a heavy pat on the shoulder. It turns out that even after being reborn, in Bob Lucy's eyes, I am still someone who can be sacrificed at any moment. Dad's face was ashen. This is human trafficking, attempted kidnapping, and intentional murder. I'm going to sue him. If anything happens to my daughter, can he bear the responsibility? My mother couldn't stay any longer. Together with the school leaders who had just arrived, she pulled me away. My father was furious and insisted that the police severely punish Bob Lucy. Absolutely no reconciliation, but Precious was still in the hospital, and in the end, the police took Bob away. My parents felt a huge sense of relief. We didn't get to have a big meal, so Dad went to get takeout and brought it back. As we ate, I told them about the past. At the same time, I gave them the chance to choose again. All these years, I've actually never forgotten the past. I was afraid that Bob Lucy would suddenly appear one day. After winning that lottery prize, I used my birthday as an excuse to ask my parents for some money. I hired a reliable private investigator and spent 2 years uncovering the entire past, and I sent that human trafficker, Sherry, and her accomplices to prison. After I finished speaking, I quietly looked at my parents, waiting for their second decision. Over the years, I have learned more and seen more, but to be fair, I don't think my parents would like someone like me. To escape, I traversed most of the map in a frantic rush. For revenge, I could lie in wait for years. I am not just a 17-year-old girl at all. I am a person with a shattered soul. Suddenly, my mother held me tightly in her arms. You, child, how can you endure so much? Exactly, Dad followed up, pressing the corner of his eye. Carrying so many worries in your heart, no wonder you're not growing taller. Come on, eat more. He picked a piece of my favorite boiled fish and put it in my bowl. Eat up now, and make sure you never do this again. We are your parents, after all, Mom said with tears in her eyes. Dad clenched his fists, saying he must hire the best lawyer to send Lynn's parents to prison. I smiled. No need, Dad. Precious is their lifeblood. With Precious gone, living is worse than death for them. Once they're inside, They won't have to worry about food or drink. How easy for them. They should be made to live freely in this world, where just surviving each day takes all their strength. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance, neither objecting, but Mom asked curiously. They repeatedly had Victoria do the matching tests and asked her to donate a kidney to Precious. Did they already know that Victoria would be a match? I shook my head. I wasn't sure about that question either. In my past life, I was simply knocked out by Lucy with a piece of candy and dragged straight to the hospital. When I woke up, a hole had already been carved in my stomach. In this lifetime, all my medical checkups have been conducted at highly confidential private hospitals. They should never have been leaked to the outside world, or perhaps, Lucy wasn't entirely certain whether my body would be a match for Precious. They are just obsessively trying to use me as a sacrifice. Upon hearing about my ordeal, the students at the school were outraged. When Lucy came to the school again, hoping to use them to pressure me, she was met with angry shouts from a group of young people. The security guards, holding defensive tools, insisted on patrolling. Chase her away as soon as you see her. Lucy had no choice but to show up during my school commute times. She cursed me, calling me a heartless ingrate who would stand by and watch my brother teeter on the edge of life and death without lifting a finger to help. She threw a tantrum, rolling on the ground and hurling a continuous stream of insults. My classmates have mobilized their younger siblings and grandparents to educate Lucy with love. Over the years, I have worked very hard and achieved excellent results, making me a child well loved by those grandparents. I heard that the human traffickers who bought me before, my so-called parents, are going to catch me and take me back to dig out my heart and kidneys to save their cheap little brother. The old men and women swung their canes with more strength than ever before. Lucy wailed and called the police, but even when the police arrived, there was nothing they could do. Those over 80 and under 14 are ages with extremely high magic resistance. On the third day, Lucy finally gave up. I don't want your kidney anymore, just give me money. I've raised you for so many years. If there's no credit, there's at least hard work. Pay me back the money I gave you back then. I looked at her coldly, not at all surprised by her compromise. How much do you need? 8 million. Lucy made an exorbitant demand. I smiled. Once again, he placed that photo in front of her. Think it over, and then tell me. In the footage, I was 6 years old but looked no more than 3 or 4. Just one glance was enough to make my classmates feel immense sympathy. They questioned Lucy, asking how she could be so shameless. Even if that's the case, so what? But back then, my family was poor. If there was food, it was already good enough that I didn't let you starve to death. If it weren't for me, who knows where you would have been sold off to. She paused, then shouted at the top of her lungs, I saved your life. I shrugged. Why don't you go explain my background to the police? 180,000, the money my dad told me to give to Lucy, on the pre-written agreement prepared by the lawyer. My parents, myself, and Lucy each signed our names under the lawyer's supervision. After receiving the money, the Lynn family and I had no further connection whatsoever, since someone had previously posted my story online. This time, my mother also posted a video on TikTok. Lucy took the money and rushed to the hospital immediately. She wanted to use 180,000 to buy a kidney for Precious, but, somehow, Precious fell in love with playing games. Upon hearing that there was money on that card, overnight, all the money was spent on gaming equipment. Lucy's hair turned white overnight. She asked Precious if she was crazy. Precious didn't take it seriously. Can't you just ask Lynn Doggy for more? I'm her brother. She has to take care of me, otherwise, just wait and see how I'll cause trouble when she finds a husband's family in the future. Lucy felt deeply powerless. What was even more distressing was that, due to consecutive late nights, Precious's health had acutely deteriorated. Because the medical expenses were not paid, the hospital only provided humanitarian treatment. Precious glared weakly at Lucy. Why don't you go find Lynn Doggy? You're my mom, are you stupid? I'm in this state and you still won't save me. I'm your only son. If you don't take care of me now, I won't take care of you in the future. Lucy was stunned for a moment. She really wanted to ask Precious where she had failed to take care of him. It was for him that Bob was even imprisoned. But before she could open her mouth, she met her son's resentful gaze. On the third early morning after spending all his money on gaming equipment, Precious closed his eyes forever. Lucy sat in the morgue, holding Precious. I don't know if it's more grief or more sorrow, learning that their only son had died. Bob wished he could strangle Lucy, but Lucy had no strength left at all. Do whatever you want, I'm leaving. After cremating Precious, she had no money left. She had to beg along the way, but, while spending the night under a certain bridge, Lucy was suddenly dragged into an endless darkness. She struggled, she begged, yet she could not resist the arrangement of fate. First, she was passed around among the homeless. Finally, she was sold by a cunning person to an extremely old widower. Iron chains were placed on her feet. From then on, she worked during the day and warmed the bed at night, endlessly. Over a year later, I was admitted to a prestigious university in J City. On the day the college entrance exam results were released, my parents held a grand celebration for me. But when my dad went to settle the bill, he was told that someone had already paid. After several inquiries, no answer was given. After that, every time we went out, whether for gatherings or trips, the bill was waived. Before the start of the school term, I deliberately set a trap. Halfway through, I went to settle the bill. Sure enough, I saw a young and beautiful woman settling my bill. Vaguely, she looked somewhat familiar. Do we know each other? I was bewildered. The other person's eyes were slightly reddened, struggling to hold back their emotions. I finally realized where the sense of familiarity came from. She and I are too alike. She said she is my sister, 1 year older than me. When my mother took us both out, I was stolen. My parents searched for me for many years. 12 years ago, while on their way to look for me, they tragically died in a car accident. Last year, she saw me on TikTok. She knows I am now living in a very good family. I don't lack money, nor do I lack love. She really wants to bring me home on behalf of my parents. But my life is too good now, and she doesn't want to take advantage of my success, nor does she want me to suffer, so she chose this way to quietly care for me. I couldn't help but feel my eyes well up. It turns out, in places I didn't know, I wasn't an unwanted and despised existence, so I wasn't abandoned. Of course not. She held me tightly. All these years, every one of us has been praying constantly, praying that the heavens would be kinder to you, that you wouldn't suffer. Unfortunately, in our past life, heaven and earth were merciless, but this time, I finally managed to rebuild myself on my own. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My best friend wanted to buy the house across from mine and asked if she should go for it. I said, if it's a necessity, you can buy it anytime. She bought it with a down payment of $300,000 and a mortgage of $700,000, but before the renovation was even finished, housing prices plummeted by 30%, wiping out her entire down payment. Frustrated and increasingly irritable due to the housing market, she ended up offending a client at work, got fired, and was blacklisted in the industry. With no income, she couldn't pay the final installment for the renovation, nor could she afford the mortgage, so she had no choice but to default. The house was foreclosed and auctioned off. In just 1 year, she went from having hundreds of thousands in assets to being nearly $1 million in debt. She blamed it all on me. In the middle of the night, she barged into my home, knocked me unconscious, and buried me in a pile of cement at her place. Born as human beings, why do you have a house, a car, and savings, while all I wanted was a place of my own? Yet I ended up like this. If it weren't for knowing you, I wouldn't be in such a rush to buy a house. It's all your fault. I suffocated to death. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day she asked me whether she should buy the house. Nancy, my bonus came through this month. I finally saved up $400,000. The apartment across from yours is on sale right now. Do you think I should go for it? Sarah held her phone up in front of me, her delicate face filled with excitement and exhilaration. On the phone screen, a glaring string of numbers appeared, 404343.43. Looking at that innocent face, my heart pounded fiercely in my chest. Instinctively, I reached up and touched the back of my head. I don't know if it's just psychological, but the spot where she hit me with the brick still seems to ache faintly. If I hadn't seen her face full of jealousy and hatred before I died, I probably would never have imagined that this friend, who on the surface was so close we could share a pair of pants, actually wished for my death behind my back. That suffocating feeling suddenly surged in my heart, and I lowered my gaze to hide the hatred in my eyes. When I looked up again, I curved my lips into a faint smile. If it's a necessity, you can buy it anytime. But the smile on her lips suddenly froze, and her fingers gripping the phone tightened a bit. But what? Is there something wrong with this house? Seeing how nervous she was, I sneered inwardly. Sarah, are you really that eager to be my neighbor? If that's the case, then so be it. Nothing, I'm just worried that you'll be under a lot of pressure. This apartment must be worth at least $1 million now. Even if you only pay a 30% down payment, the mortgage afterward might be too much to handle. After all, Your monthly salary is only 15,000. You still have a 3,000 car loan, and after buying the apartment, you'll need to renovate. Even the most basic renovation here costs at least 200,000. The first half of the sentence made her expression soften, and she looked at me with a touch of emotion, thinking I was genuinely concerned for her. By the time I finished the second half, her face instantly turned pale, and the fleeting envy and resentment in her eyes gave me a secret thrill. Having been best friends for so many years, I certainly know what to say that will hit her right in the heart. She is a girl from the countryside. Because her family had no money when she was young, she endured too much hardship, so she studied relentlessly and finally escaped her family of origin. We were college roommates and naturally became best friends. Over the years, I've actually been well aware that she has always been trying to keep up with my pace. I joined the student council. And she did too. I ran for class officer, and she ran as well. I participated in competitions, and she also took part. After graduation, I got into a large company, and she wanted to join too. Unfortunately, the company had high standards and only hired 2 people that year, so she was eliminated. The clear gap between us started from this point. Unable to join the same company as me, she settled for the second best and went to work for the rival company across the street from mine. Afterward, she even explained to me, saying she just wanted to be closer to me. Although they are our rival company, that company across the street has always been outperformed by ours, with neither the projects nor the resources matching what we have, so the longer we worked, the wider the gap between her and me became. But she has always been someone who strives for excellence. The strong never complain about their environment. She was determined to excel in everything and be the best. In the end, she barely managed to keep up with my pace. After 8 years of graduation, I am already a project manager with a monthly income of 30,000 and an annual salary of 400,000. As for her, although she is also a project manager, that company always likes to compete with our company, but they can't win, and they often resort to underhanded tactics, which eventually leads to financial losses and poor economic performance. So her annual salary has never exceeded 200,000. I am a local, and right after graduation, my parents bought me a 98 square meter 3-bedroom apartment in a school district and arranged a $200,000 car for me. Last year, I wanted to upgrade to a larger flat, so after discussing with my parents, we sold my small 3-bedroom apartment. The house I bought for 300,000 back then was sold for 900,000. I added over 200,000 of my own money and paid in full for this new 3-bedroom apartment of 150 square meters near the company. My parents were afraid that buying a new house would leave me financially strained, so they insisted on covering the renovation costs. As a result, this house didn't force me to lower my standard of living. After graduation, Sarah always wanted to keep up with me, unable to afford a house. She took out a loan to buy the same car model as mine. At the time, I didn't think much of it and even worried that her life might become tight after buying the car. I suggested she move in with me, rent-free, but she refused, saying that she would obtain everything she wanted through her own efforts and didn't need anyone's charity. That same day, she rented a 1-bedroom apartment in the building where I used to live. Last year, when she saw that I had moved to a new development, she also wanted to rent a place here. However, there were no available rentals in the area at the time, so she had to give up the idea. Originally, she had planned to buy a place there. With the money she had saved last year, buying a small 2-bedroom wouldn't have been too much of a financial strain. After I moved in, she shifted her gaze and followed the agent to look at the house across from me several times. However, due to financial constraints, she hesitated. After saving for another year, a major project came along a few months ago with a bonus of 50,000. As soon as the money hit her account, she couldn't hold back any longer. I knew she wouldn't back down just because of my discouragement. On the contrary, she would feel that I looked down on her, and being hurt by my words would only fuel her desire to buy a house even more. Sure enough, she quickly concealed the emotions in her eyes, staring straight at me with a face full of confidence, and faintly, there was even a hint of smugness. "Nancy, come with me to the sales office. I'm taking this house. The fish has taken the bait." I suppressed the joy in my heart, still putting on a worried expression. "But can you really afford it, Sarah? As women, we don't need to put so much pressure on ourselves. Renting a house for life isn't so bad either. When you get married, the man will have a house too, right?" I admit, I was being a bit deliberate, but she fell for it. Sure enough, her originally wavering gaze immediately became resolute. "Nancy, a rented house will never truly be my own, and a man's house has nothing to do with me either. I want to have my own home in this city. I didn't try to persuade her any further, suppressing the joy in my eyes. I went with her to the sales office without another word. She was decisive. Once she made up her mind, she went ahead and bought it, however, because she bought it a few days earlier this time. The house ended up costing $100,000 more than it did in her previous life, a down payment of $330,000, a loan of $770,000, an interest of $400,000, suddenly burdened with nearly $1.2 million in debt. She showed not a trace of worry or fear. Instead, she was full of confidence and said she would treat me to a big meal. Of course, I didn't refuse. I even deliberately picked an expensive restaurant, and the meal cost her nearly $1,000. Watching her pained expression, I secretly felt pleased. Let you pretend to be noble, let you act generous, let you be one way in front of people and another behind their backs, suffer to death. Sarah, this is just the beginning. Next, Nancy, am going to have a good time playing with you. After buying the house, she looked for several renovation teams but wasn't satisfied with any of them. In the end, she came to me for help. Nancy, could you recommend the renovation team you used before? They seem really reliable and hassle-free. As she spoke, she also looked around, taking in the layout of my home, and send me the links to your soft furnishings and furniture too, for reference. We've always had similar tastes, and I really like your home's decor style. I had long expected her to ask me for these things. Copying and pasting is something she's clearly mastered. I had already prepared everything and, without a second thought, sent her the WeChat contact of the interior design team. I've sent you the contact for the renovation team. As for the soft furnishings and furniture, their interior designer handles everything. It's mostly custom-made, so I'll send that to you as well. But Sarah, are you sure you want to go with my renovation team and this designer? They're not cheap, you know. Just the mention of not cheap made her expression shift noticeably. She really can't handle even the slightest provocation. She added friends on her own, the smile on her face never fading. It's fine, expensive has its benefits. I've already bought $1 million house. What's a little extra for renovation and design fees? Watching her feign nonchalance, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Let's see if you can still smile like that once you get their quotes. She didn't avoid me and directly asked for the quote, and the two people on the other side didn't disappoint me either. The three of us formed a group and found that the floor plan and requirements she provided were quite similar to mine. The initial quote was $900,000, along with a rough breakdown. Her expression couldn't hold up anymore, and she turned to look at me in surprise. Nancy, you weren't scammed, were you? I've looked into a few companies these past few days, and their quotes for both soft and hard furnishings are only around $300,000. How come yours is several times more expensive? I smiled nonchalantly, lazily leaning back on the sofa and raising an eyebrow at her. Is this sofa comfortable? $66,000 for the set, and the bed in my room. You've slept in it before, right? $60,000 for one. As for these renovation materials, they're all the most eco-friendly and top quality. You get what you pay for. I value quality. And honestly, you don't have to go with these two companies. Just do what you can afford and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Stirring her up a bit, her expression turned sour again. In the end, she still didn't agree to choose this company. This price was already beyond what she could afford, and I never expected her to choose this one. But seeing her frustrated, moody, and barely able to hide the jealousy and resentment in her eyes, I was actually quite pleased. Be jealous, be angry, be resentful. After all, anger harms the body, and it's your own health that's being damaged. Attacking the mind brings me more satisfaction than attacking the body. Seeing her stewing in frustration with no way to vent it makes me happier than watching her eat coarse food. A few days later, she told me she had found a suitable renovation company. Unsurprisingly, it was the same one as in the previous life. A full package for $300,000 may seem cheap, but in reality, there are many hidden fees. I tried to persuade her in my previous life, but she wouldn't listen, and in the end, she kept pouring more and more money into it. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late to cancel the order, so she had no choice but to grit her teeth and continue with the renovation. Time flew by, and housing prices had already started to fall. When they dropped by 15%, Sarah suddenly came to me. Nancy, I've been thinking, and I've decided to transfer this property. How is this different from my previous life? The housing prices haven't hit rock bottom yet. If she sells now, how will I be able to snag a bargain later? You should know, after I died, I didn't immediately get reborn. Instead, I saw the housing market trends for the next 10 years. The sharp drop in housing prices over the past few months is only temporary. At the latest, by the end of the year, prices will rebound and skyrocket. Before I could persuade her, her next words left me stunned. Sending a chill down my spine, she said, "Nancy, I know, you've been reborn too. You already knew the housing prices would drop, but instead of stopping me, you pushed me to buy immediately, costing me an extra 100,000 compared to my previous life. And as for the renovation company, you didn't try to dissuade me either, letting me fall back into that bottomless pit. You want to get back at me, don't you?" A chill shot up from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head, causing my brain to freeze for a moment. So, has she also been reborn? But I quickly calmed down. Since she decided to sell the house now, she must not know that the housing prices would rebound and skyrocket after our deaths. Afraid she might have recording devices on her, I certainly couldn't admit to the matter of rebirth. Otherwise, given her ruthless nature, if she could bury me in a concrete pile in my previous life, this time she might just send me straight to a research institute. Sarah, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Rebirth, isn't that something you only find in novels? After all, I've been through a rebirth once before, and I haven't lost any of the maturity and composure from my past life. Right now, feigning ignorance, I even admire my own acting skills. I didn't expect her to believe me, and sure enough, a meaningful smile appeared on her face. The eyes staring at me were unnervingly calm and gentle. "Nancy, are you still going to pretend with me? We're both reborn. What's the point of hiding anything? In my previous life, I impulsively caused your death. In this life, even if you set a trap that cost me an extra 100,000, I'll accept it. After all, I wronged you first. All past grievances are behind me now. After all these years of friendship, in my heart, you are my best friend, and you always will be." Her deeply affectionate demeanor left me somewhat dazed, almost making me believe her words. But my reason tells me that a dog can't change its habit of eating filth. If I truly were her best friend as she claims, she wouldn't have buried me alive in a pile of cement in our previous life. While she was pouring water onto the cement pile, I pleaded with her emotionally, trying to awaken her conscience. For 2 whole hours, I shouted until my throat felt like it was on fire, even as the last shovel of cement was thrown over my head and face, and the last ladle of water was poured. She showed not a hint of remorse. Before dragging me into her house, she had specifically reinforced the soundproofing throughout the entire place, but she didn't tell me this from the start. Instead, she waited until I had exhausted myself from screaming for help, just so my hope would slowly fade, leaving me to die in despair. "I really don't understand what you're saying, Sarah." "Wait, what do you mean by that?" I quietly turned on the voice recorder on my phone. "Are you reborn?" A flicker of caution flashed in her eyes. Her slightly parted lips paused for a moment before she immediately closed them. I tilted my head, feigning confusion, but my tone was firm. "Sarah, you've been reborn, haven't you?" She lowered her head, and when she looked up a minute later, her eyes were clear and bright as she spoke with a smile. "Oh, Nancy, I was just joking with you earlier. What rebirth? I just watched a short drama about rebirth and revenge, and that's what sparked my playful mood. Lately, the housing prices have been wearing me out, and I can't help but let my mind wander, imagining myself in a short drama." I knew she could put on an act. Her expression and tone right now seemed so genuine. If I hadn't lived through a past life, I might have been completely fooled by her. After being close friends for years, there are times when we understand each other better than we understand ourselves. I don't admit to being reborn, but the issues I've considered, she has naturally considered as well. "Gee, you said all that so convincingly. I almost thought you were reborn. You really scared me. It's just too unbelievable." She forced a weak smile and said, "How could that be? Things like that only happen in novels. We should believe in science." We exchanged a knowing smile, and neither of us brought up the topic again, but we both knew very well that the hidden card had already been laid out on the table. "Sarah, are you serious about transferring the house? If you transfer it now, you'll lose quite a bit of money. After all, it's a necessity, and sooner or later you'll have to buy one. Besides, it's only dropped by 100 or 200,000. And you've already paid half of the renovation costs. What if the housing prices bounce back in the future?" She hesitated and glanced at me, her expression somewhat dejected. "They won't bounce back. Based on the current trend, housing prices will only keep falling. Haven't you seen all the talk online lately that prices won't recover for the next few years? Nowadays, nobody wants to get married, and the birth rate is getting lower every year. Young people prefer to lie flat and are more inclined to rent. The older generation already own their homes and can pass them down to their children. Our generation has a lot of only children, and no one is buying houses anymore. With so many buildings constructed in recent years, how can prices possibly rise? If I sell my house now, it's like cutting my losses in time. At worst, I'll just work hard for a few more years and buy another one when prices hit rock bottom. She sighed as she analyzed the situation, her tone filled with regret, but she never mentioned her earlier loss from buying the house. Who would have thought that in this second chance at life, she would become so cautious and clear-headed? But this won't do. She acted in time to cut her losses now, and her work wasn't affected. Losing $300,000 to $400,000 isn't a big enough blow to her. The grudge from my past life, buried alive in concrete, I can only swallow it and suffer in silence. Have you listed your house yet? Any suitable buyers? She sighed and shook her head. Not yet. I wanted to ask for your opinion first. Since you always see things in the long term, I'm actually a bit hesitant. The location is really good, and the price drop has been relatively small so far. Indeed, our community has seen a relatively smaller drop, with the highest decline only reaching 35%. Now, with just a 15% decrease, it's still possible to sell, but in another week, when it drops to 25%. I'm afraid even fewer people will be willing to buy. Those who were originally planning to sell will likely choose to wait and see, hoping to snag a big bargain, and even when it dropped to 35% back then, the trading volume was extremely low. Many mortgaged properties eventually ended up as foreclosed homes. Behind this, there is a big hand manipulating it all. In the end, Sarah still listed the house for sale, with an initial asking price of $950,000, as expected. No one showed any interest for 4 or 5 days. She grew a bit anxious, seeing that the price was about to plummet. She quickly contacted the agent to lower the price again, setting the listing price at $880,000. Fortunately, on the afternoon of the 7th day, someone finally inquired about the house. When the agent brought someone to view the house, I happened to be at home, and Sarah pulled me along. The other party was clearly very satisfied with this apartment. They didn't even haggle over the price and were willing to complete the transaction and make the payment on the same day. Everything was going too smoothly. Sarah was a person who tended to overthink and was prone to wild imaginings. Taking advantage of the buyer being on the phone, she pulled me into the hallway. Nancy, this house has been on the market for several days without any inquiries. Now, after just a price reduction of $70,000, how did it sell so easily? I don't know why. But I always feel there's something off about this. Seeing her troubled expression, I suppressed the mockery in my eyes and spoke with a puzzled look. What's off? The housing supply here has always been tight, and the price you got is already quite good. Besides, the buyer is purchasing out of necessity. You even paid half of the renovation costs, and the buyer is quite satisfied with the renovation design. Buying now is practically a steal. She was left speechless. A flicker of pain flashing in her eyes, and she still seemed hesitant, perhaps thinking of her fate in her previous life. She finally gritted her teeth and decided to go through with it. When we returned to the house, we happened to hear the excited voice of the buyer on the phone. Don't worry, I'm sure to secure this house. Young people these days are just too impatient and narrow-minded. They only see the current housing price crash but don't realize how deep the waters run. Fortunately, you have inside information that housing prices will skyrocket again in 3 months, especially in this area. At that time, the surge will be even more dramatic. If we buy this house at this price now, we can double our money by flipping it in 3 months. Sarah's pupils contracted, and her whole body froze in place. Trembling slightly, I struggled to suppress the laughter in my heart, glancing at her with words left unspoken. She happened to turn her head to look at me, bit her lip, and walked toward the buyer in her high heels. Hearing the noise, the buyer turned around. When he saw us, he looked like a mouse spotting a cat, hurriedly hung up the phone, and his expression turned somewhat unnatural. Oh my, how come you two walk without making a sound? Sarah's expression was also unpleasant. She glanced at the agent, then swept her eyes over me, and finally fixed her gaze on the buyer. Sorry, I'm not selling this house for now. In the end, the house wasn't sold. Sarah also had the agent remove the listing from the internet, planning to tough it out a bit longer and reassess in 3 months. She searched for a lot of information online and consulted some friends in the real estate industry, who all subtly shared their opinions. After the housing prices plummet, they are bound to surge. As long as we get through this difficult period, achieving class mobility in the near future won't be a problem. A seasoned senior also revealed some news. in the near future, City No. 1 middle school and the municipal traditional Chinese medicine hospital will also relocate to this area, and by then, housing prices here will rise accordingly. Filled with hope for the future, her mood remained unaffected this time. Not only did she not lose her job, but she also became increasingly motivated, successfully securing several major projects. The housing prices here had already dropped by 30%. 3 days had passed since she defaulted on her mortgage in her previous life and vented her resentment on me. Just as she began to believe that her rebirth had created a butterfly effect and that her future was destined to be bright and smooth, the 3-month deadline arrived. Now, it seemed as though she could already see her brilliant future. She no longer acted cautiously around me, and her little desire to show off was written all over her face. She spent money without any restraint. For my birthday, my mom gave me a bag worth $60,000, and the next day she bought one for herself too, even to reward herself for landing a big project and to attend the celebration party 3 days later. She also bought the same limited edition dress I had purchased a month earlier, which cost another $60,000. With the dress and the bag taken care of, the jewelry naturally couldn't be left out. The day before the celebration party, she bought another set of jewelry from the same niche brand as mine, also worth $60,000. I don't know what was going through her mind, but before heading to the party venue, she deliberately came to my house dressed like that just to show off. Between the lines, it was all about how successful her life was, with subtle hints mocking me, a local, for having the life I have now only because of my parents, unlike her, who has achieved everything on her own. In short, her point was nothing more than that I'm not as capable as she is, and that her future achievements will surely surpass mine. It carries the meaning of, the world is ever changing, and one should not look down on the young and poor. Seeing her like this, I thought to myself, she must either be so carried away with pride that she's gone mad, or there's something wrong with her mind. Indeed, the more people lack something, the more they tend to show it off, but on the surface, I still pretended to remain unperturbed. No matter what she said, I handled it with ease, making her efforts feel like punching cotton. She had entered happily, but left with a displeased expression, no doubt. She was holding back a bellyful of anger. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching her get into the private car. A faint smile curled at the corner of my lips as I lowered my head and sent a message. Those documents can be put to use tonight. Congratulations in advance on your promotion to supervisor. After being reborn, I haven't been idle either, especially after learning that she had also been reborn. I hired someone to keep an eye on her every move, so I know exactly how she landed these major projects. For tonight's celebration of the multimillion-dollar project, she pulled quite a few strings behind the scenes, even going so far as to sleep with the client's point of contact. But that point of contact is married, and his wife happens to be the boss's own sister, and the kickbacks they received in this project were not a small amount. At 11 o'clock in the evening, that person replied to my message, "Thanks, it's settled, Sarah is out." I closed my phone, holding a glass of red wine as I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, just in time to see Sarah getting out of a taxi. Her once exquisite makeup and hairstyle were now in disarray, her face bruised and swollen, clearly showing she had been severely beaten. The $60,000 dress she wore was torn to shreds, barely covering the essential parts of her body. The high heels she wore today were the ones I had given her as a housewarming gift. Now, one shoe was missing, and the remaining one had a broken heel. I narrowed my eyes slightly, downed the glass of red wine in my hand, and drew all the curtains in the house. Not long after, the sound of the doorbell and knocking came from the entrance. Immediately after, Sarah's message came through, "Nancy, are you home? Hurry up and open the door for me." I glanced at my phone and opened the surveillance footage on my tablet. Looking at her up close, her appearance was even more disheveled, her face a complete mess. The earring that matched mine had been torn off, and blood was now oozing from her ear. It looked painful just to see. Admiring her pitiful state, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. 3 minutes later, I finally replied to her message. My parents asked me to come home tonight, but I'm not home. What's up?" On the tablet, her face stiffened. A few seconds later, she wiped her face and continued typing. "I got beaten up and I'm too scared to go home. I was hoping to stay at your place tonight, since you're not there. Can you just send me the door lock code? I'll let myself in." I stared at these words for a few seconds, sneering inwardly. "You're so entitled, thinking you can just ask for things." Fortunately, I was prepared. I replaced my password lock with a facial recognition lock and even reinforced my door. My door doesn't have a password lock, it only works with facial recognition. maybe you should just stay at a star-rated hotel. Their security is definitely better than mine, after sending that message. Her face visibly darkened. In her current state, no hotel would dare take her in, they might even call the police directly. Given how much she values her pride, how could she ever allow herself to go through such an experience? For now, the only option left for her is to move into her half-renovated new house. But now that winter has arrived, the house has no heating facilities at all. Spending a night there would be no different from sleeping on the streets. What's more, I even prepared a little gift for her. She did indeed move into her new house. I happily put on a face mask and lay on the bed watching the video from tonight's celebration banquet. Indeed, when it comes to revenge, the process is far more satisfying than the outcome, watching her being pinned to the ground, brutally beaten and screaming with no way to escape. The resentment I had been holding inside seemed to lessen just a little. I glanced at the time, midnight. It was time for my gift to make its appearance. Grabbing my drone controller, half an hour later, Sarah's frantic screams echoed through the hallway. I put away the drone with satisfaction, removed the ghostly white cloth model from it, and set down the controller. Well, now I feel completely at ease. Sarah, since you've been reborn, you must be quite a believer in these ghost stories, right? Not to mention, in your previous life, you personally caused my death in that very house. Now that the vengeful spirits are coming for your life, it's time for you to have a taste of it. I left early the next morning, perfectly avoiding Sarah. After being tormented all night, she's probably sleeping soundly in the house right now. When I got home from work, Sarah was crouching at my doorstep. When she saw me, it was as if she had seen a savior. Nancy, you're finally back. I frowned slightly. She really is persistent, isn't she? Determined to stick to me like a shadow. But seeing her bloodshot eyes, my heart raised a high alert. I reached my right hand into my bag and gripped the stun baton. How come you're at my doorstep? You didn't camp out here all night, did you? My feigned tone of concern softened her gaze a little. Right now, she looks at me as if I were a lifeline. Nancy, please save me. I brought her into my home, and she told me everything that happened last night. But in her words, she was the most innocent person. Things like flirting with the contact person, it was all because he saw her beauty and coerced or tempted her. As for the kickbacks, she didn't take a single penny. It was all taken by the contact person. Last night's incident was caused by colleagues who were jealous of her recent performance. It was all a misunderstanding, but the mistake had already been made. The company claimed her actions had caused severe damage to the company's reputation and decided to fire her, revoke the commissions from those projects, and even reserved the right to take legal action against her. She had no way to defend herself and could only accept the consequences. However, after this incident, not only was she fired by the company, but she was also blacklisted in the industry. It's likely she will never find such a good job again. Her mortgage and car loans have now become extremely difficult to manage. Nancy, your family is so wealthy, could you lend me some money first? That property of mine is about to skyrocket in value. Don't worry, once it surges, I'll sell it and pay you back immediately. She gripped my arm tightly, her eyes filled with anticipation. I pretended to hesitate and let out a sigh. But I don't have that much money on me, you know. All the money I earn is spent by myself. And I even need my parents to subsidize me on a daily basis. Before I could finish speaking, she immediately interrupted me. Nancy, we're best friends. Could you go back home and talk to your parents for me? I don't need too much, just enough to get through the next month or two, at most, just 100,000. I've bought some things on my credit card these days and need to pay it back next month. I looked at her in astonishment. 100,000. She really dares to ask for that much. In your previous life, you stubbornly refused to lower your head to me, insisting on toughing it out on your own. Only when you were driven to a dead end did you think of dragging me down with you. Now that you've been given a second chance at life, you've actually come to your senses and are willing to let go of that damn pride of yours. It seems that having died once really clears the mind and makes one value life more. But on second thought, the reason she's willing to lower her head now is probably because she sees hope, believing that in just another month or two, she'll strike it rich with the house. I bit my lip, feeling a bit troubled. All right then, I'll go back and discuss it with my parents first. I'll take you back while I'm at it. If you stay here too long, what if those people come looking? Won't our new address be exposed too? What should we do if they show up then? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded and agreed to go back to the old neighborhood first. After seeing her off, I went back to my parents' house for dinner. The next day happened to be Saturday, and I didn't return to my own home for those 2 days. Sarah sent me a lot of messages, but I brushed them all off. When asked, I said I was trying to gather money and win over my parents, since $100,000 is no small amount. A few days later, I gave her $30,000. Sarah, I tried my best to persuade them. But my parents only gave me this much, use it for now, and I'll try to negotiate with them again later. I thought she would look down on me for giving so little, but I never expected her gaze to be so intense, with 2 clear tears streaming down from the corners of her eyes. Nancy, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. In my past life, it was all my fault. If I had reached out to you sooner, could we have? Never mind, thankfully. In this life, I've come to my senses. Nancy, I'm sorry. Her sudden words sent a momentary tremor through my heart, awakening. But Sarah, the harm you've caused me can't just be erased with a rebirth. No wonder she knew I might be reborn too, yet didn't keep her distance from me. It turns out she saw that I never sought revenge and thought I was foolish, magnanimous, and held no grudges. Indeed, in her eyes, haven't I always been like that all these years? No matter what mistake she made, I would forgive her. But Sarah, this is the hatred of murder. It's the hatred that made my parents, with their white hair, send off their black-haired child, that made my father die of a cerebral hemorrhage on the operating table from sheer anxiety, and that made my mother, consumed by grief, follow my father in death. Your momentary impulse, your jealousy, wiped out my entire family of 3. A week later, housing prices plummeted again to 35%. This sharp decline will last for a month and a half. Sarah held on for another month and found that housing prices still hadn't recovered. Finally becoming restless, after searching online, the situation had completely reversed. There were more voices predicting a decline than a rise. Everyone was saying that second-hand homes were about to become dirt cheap, that the market wouldn't recover by next year, and that prices might even continue to fall. The relocation news that the older brother had mentioned was also confirmed to be a rumor. Sarah's world had collapsed. She had held on for so long, from losing $300,000 to $400,000 to now losing $500,000 to $600,000. She couldn't find a job, and if she continued like this, she would surely repeat her mistakes. The house would be foreclosed, and she would be left with millions in debt. Having been given a second chance at life, she valued it too much to die. She could still tell the difference between losing $500,000 to $600,000 and being saddled with millions in debt. She once again contacted the agent, planning to put the house up for sale. However, given the current sharp decline in the market, most people are still waiting, especially in our neighborhood, where Sarah's situation is already common knowledge. Knowing her circumstances, everyone feels they can wait until her house is foreclosed before making a move. Once again, there was no interest at all. A week later, fearing the price would plummet again, she lowered the original listing price from $850,000 to $800,000, but after 3 days, there was still no interest, so she further reduced the price to $750,000. It's about time to make a move. The person I arranged inquired about the property and ultimately purchased it under the name of my cousin from abroad. Even with the money, Sarah was still in debt. Misfortunes never come singly. Her rent was due in just a few days. At the same time, news came that housing prices were rebounding. Sarah was going crazy. She came to me, begging to borrow money so she could buy back the house. Now, she was already a person with a tarnished credit record and couldn't secure a loan at all. Looking at her, who was once so glamorous and now looked so weathered, I couldn't help but feel a pang of emotion in my heart. But in the end, I still refused her. Sarah, properties like houses are hard for ordinary people to afford. You should keep your feet on the ground. Unable to get help from me, it just so happened that her parents came looking for her. Of course, I was the one who had someone notify them. Her parents, upon learning that she had nothing in the city and was buried in debt, felt ashamed and decided to marry her off to a nouveau riche in their town. The other party offered to pay off her debts and provide a dowry of $660,000. She was tempted, thinking that since the other person was so generous, they would surely give her money to buy a house in the city after marriage. That way, she could still make a fortune on her own and break free from them. Filled with calculations, she agreed to her parents' request and chose to return to her hometown to get married. He left and never came back. That nouveau riche is a pervert. He was wealthy, but he played around and was an extremely controlling man. 3 years later, news came that she was seriously ill, begging me to see her one last time. I went. Looking at her lying on the sickbed, barely clinging to life, I remained outwardly calm. She stared at me intently, her eyes filled with regret. Nancy, that past life of yours, it never truly left your heart, did it? I didn't respond to her until the moment she was about to take her last breath. Only then did I lean close to her ear and softly reply, "From the moment I was reborn, I had already planned your ending, and that apartment of yours, I was the one who bought it. When I sold it last year, the transaction price was 2 million. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.